Hi, I'm Danny. Today I'm going to explain a movie where a deadly supermoon causes over 1 billion people to mutate into monsters. As the next supermoon approaches, one man must risk everything to protect his family and maybe save humanity itself. Let's dive in. Dr. James Aranda speaks in an interview about the terrible incident that occurred a year ago because of a supermoon, during which over 1 billion people around the world suffered violent mutations, transforming into terrible creatures when exposed to moonlight. Humanity was greatly shaken, but the worst is that this will happen again due to another supermoon that will occur. The interviewer asks the doctor how this could have happened, but he does not answer. He simply says everyone should avoid going out in the moonlight that day and that everyone should have a survival plan. He also states they are working persistently on a solution and that they will survive this. We then meet Wesley Marshall, a former soldier and molecular biologist who is with his sister-in-law Lucy and his niece. Emma Lucy lost her husband during the last supermoon and is paying tribute to him at that moment. With the abrupt loss of her brother, Wesley will not accept any more and is committed to protecting his sister-in-law and niece. He is working on barricading the entire house to ensure more safety when the monsters arise. Additionally, he spreads several traps around the house, electrifies the fence, and sets up an external monitoring system. His neighbors are all scared, and each rushes to prepare as best as they can for that terrible night. A neighbor of Lucy named Reagan knocks on the door to leave some candy for Emma before leaving. Lucy hands her some useful items for that night and asks her to take care. At that moment, Wesley goes to his oblivious neighbor, named Cody, and asks him to stop irresponsibly practicing target shooting since there are children on the street and he has just shot one of his fuel cans. But Cody says he is just preparing for the hellish night they will face soon, where it will be every man for himself. Then Wesley informs Lucy that the house is all locked up and reminds her of the survival rules. Do not open the door for anyone, do not make noise, and do not draw attention. He tells her not to hesitate to shoot if she needs to protect herself or Emma, no matter who. It is after that Wesley says goodbye to his niece, explaining that he cannot stay with them and assuring her that nothing will enter there to hurt them. In another part of the house, Wesley hesitates about having to go, but Lucy says the scientists need him, so he decides to go after all. Wesley then leaves, keeping the girls locked up in the house and the streets. A real commotion is taking place as people rush to get to safe places. In a press conference with scientists and military leaders, Dr. James introduces the team that will work hard to find a solution to that evil, and Wesley is among them as an essential member. Dr. James states that the team has developed a serum they call Monst, capable of blocking the actions of the supermoon with human DNA, and that night will be essential to finding a definitive cure. He then concludes by wishing everyone good luck inside the facilities. Scientists and military personnel direct volunteers to be test subjects and test the serum's effectiveness by exposing them to moonlight that night in order to find an effective and definitive cure. If the serum works, one of the test subjects is Miles, the husband of scientist Amy. Miles is then bound with strong chains and locked in a massive cage. With the sun already hiding on the horizon, the population enters a countdown to the worst moment. Wesley and others from the team put on special suits to avoid mutation from the light of the supermoon and head to where the test subjects are. Besides Miles, the other 3 are a woman and 2 men. The place then enters a countdown for the total influence of the supermoon, and the scientists prepare. The woman who volunteered starts to panic, saying she has changed her mind and asking to leave. But it's too late for that, and soon the roof of the testing shed opens, revealing an immense moon in the sky. The moment is tense, but none of the volunteers transform, appearing that the serum has been a success. The scientists become excited and prepare for the next step. Meanwhile, on Lucy Street, we see a shadow passing quickly, alerting Cody and Lucy. Who is with her daughter? The lights in the houses begin to flicker, making the moment even more concerning. Lucy looks at the monitors but sees nothing unusual. Reagan, however, at home, calls for her mother, but there is no answer. She begins to gasp and becomes frightened, when suddenly behind her, we can see the monstrosity rising to attack. Meanwhile, in the testing wing, Dr. James enters the area where the volunteers are, and Wesley shows the serum acting against the mutation. Wesley states that whatever this mutation is, it appears to be a kind of dormant defense response triggered by the supermoon. James asks why this is happening only now, but Wesley still doesn't know the answer to that. However, suddenly Miles starts to feel something, and his body begins to enter a state of mutation. James orders them to immediately spray the serum on him, but Miles, already transforming, grabs the machine with one of his hands that is already growing fur. The monster throws the device away, and chaos begins in the area. As a result, the other 3 volunteers also begin to transform. The system in the facility starts to malfunction. And even with Amy shouting to quickly close the roof, this cannot be done because of an electrical failure, while chaos ensues and the volunteers transform into monsters. Wesley realizes that Miles has also been exposed and is mutating. He tries to apply a tranquilizer, but it does not work. The transformation completes rapidly, and he attacks one of the scientists, running afterward. The madness and despair are so great at this point that while Wesley carries his injured colleague to a safe place, another scientist shoots desperately in all directions in an attempt to hit the monster. But what he achieves is merely freeing one of those imprisoned in the cages, the werewolves. Unleashed Insight managed to eliminate the scientists, including the one with the gun. Some scientists are being escorted by military personnel outside, while Amy is trying to get out. She ends up encountering Wesley and the injured colleague when they hear a roar coming from the corridor ahead. Then change direction to enter another room. The monster catches sight of them and runs to grab them, but they barely manage to lock themselves in another room. Meanwhile, Lucy gets scared seeing the movement of the beasts on the cameras. Cody is waiting for the monster's attack, and aiming outside at one of them on a tree, he begins to shoot. Wesley's colleague and Amy's injured friend cannot withstand their injuries and die. Amy wants to stay there until help arrives, but Wesley says help won't come and that they will die if they stay. But Amy reminds him that leaving those walls means facing the moonlight and transforming into monsters. But he says they will be able to use the serum formula for that. Cody is still on high alert, aiming outside, when suddenly a freezer comes flying through the window, throwing him away. To make matters worse, he is exposed to moonlight and begins the transformation process. Wesley and Amy sneak through the facility, avoiding the path of the creatures until they arrive in a room and prepare with everything they can. Knowing that the serum's effect lasts about an hour, Wesley sets a clock so he doesn't waste any time and tells them that if one of them transforms, the other must go on alone. When they leave, they encounter Miles transformed, and Amy stops Wesley from shooting, firing first at a gas container to stun the beast. They manage to escape and get into a car driving away. Wesley's current goal is to get to Lucy's house. On the way, he calls to check if she is okay. Lucy tells what is happening, including that she saw one of the werewolves invade Cody's house. Then she hears someone calling her from outside. It's Reagan, who is screaming for help outside and covered with a tarp has not transformed. Lucy, in despair, wants to help but knows it is a gigantic risk to take on the phone. Wesley shouts for her not to open the door for anyone, trying to remind her of the rules. Lucy, desperate seeing her neighbor so exposed, decides she will help her, and through the sound system of the camera, asks her to stay calm, that she will be right there. However, it's too late, and this won't be possible as one of the creatures jumps on Reagan, dragging her away to make matters worse. A bus advances in front of the car. Wesley is in with Amy, and the collision is inevitable. After failing to communicate with Wesley anymore, Lucy sees the brutality with which the werewolf devours her friend outside and dissolves into tears. Outside, the monstrosity lets out a terrifying roar and leaves Lucy and her daughter even more horrified. Wesley and Amy survive the collision, but need to hurry to get out of the car as everything is starting to catch fire, and an explosion will happen soon. With great effort, the two manage to escape the werewolf, which is Cody picks up Reagan's body and throws it against the electric fence of Lucy's house in an attempt to disable it after telling Emma to stay in a safe place. Lucy sees that the werewolf Cody is near the electric fence and then activates a pepper spray to the creature's face, causing it to roar in pain. Wesley and Amy, now on foot, try to continue on their way as best they can without drawing the unwanted attention of the monsters. But ahead they encounter a pack of werewolves vandalizing a car, and with no other alternative, they decide to try to sneak past unnoticed. They go slowly and cautiously, crouch behind the cars on the other side of the street. But at one point, one of the creatures begins to sniff their presence nearby with no alternatives. Wesley then pulls Amy under a car, hoping that their scent will blend with so many others on the street, and the monster will pass by without seeing them. The creature reaches where they were and starts breaking the windows of the car, trying to find something. But to their terror, the werewolf crouches beside them and senses the air. However, it leaves as if it hadn't managed to identify that they are underneath the car. The werewolf, Cody, desperately tries to relieve the burning in his eyes, pouring all the water he can, and already recovered, lets out a terrifying howl, making Lucy more fearful. Believing that the werewolf has indeed left, Wesley and Amy get out from under the car and look around, seeing that apparently the monsters are gone. However, their clock begins to beep, indicating that an hour has passed and the effect of the serum will wear off. This also reveals that the werewolves are actually still around. Rising upon hearing the beeping with no alternative, they run for their lives, but the beast soon chases them. They see a supermarket gate closing and run to get in. Inside, they see a boy who shows that he was the one who closed the gate and shouts for them to follow him further inside. They are surprised by nasty people who immobilize Amy with a blade. They try to warn that they are scientists and are working on a cure, but one of the masked men says there's no cure and asks for a valid reason not to throw them to the monsters outside. Wesley says he just wants to get to his family and that he needs to use the tunnel underneath the establishment to do that. The man then seems to relent and says he will take them to the entrance, but warns that from there on out they will be on their own through the cameras. Lucy sees that the street is overrun by creatures and realizes they seem to be organizing for something. Wesley and Amy manage to reach the tunnel and proceed cautiously when they come across a locked gate. Wesley prepares to shoot and open it. However, before he can do this, one of the creatures jumps right behind them. Their only alternative now is to fight to avoid dying, but before they can shoot, the monster throws itself against them, knocking down the gate ahead, and leaving them on the ground. Amy faints from the impact, and Wesley tries to get up but is thrown away again. The creature lunges at him, but Wesley manages to grab an iron bar and stabs the beast with it, which quickly dies. Amy wakes up and helps him up so they can move on further ahead. They finally reach an access to the street, but soon stop to avoid being affected by the light of the supermoon. They cover themselves with tarps and try to move on. Upon entering a nearby store, they accidentally trigger an alarm, but quickly turn it off since they know it will draw the creature's attention like an invitation to dinner. They have another dose of serum for each of them, but as it's very hot, they need to put it in the freezer to cool it before spraying it on themselves. Hence the reason for entering that store at Lucy's house. As the electric fence remains functional, she and her daughter are still a bit safer since the creatures know they cannot pass through there. Then one by one, they now start destroying the cameras, leaving only two, and Lucy is nearly blind while they wait for the serum to cool. Wesley confesses to Amy that he has always been on missions around the world and did not have time to start a family and even didn't want to. But with the death of his brother, he now feels obligated to protect his family, which is also his, but fears he is not doing it right as he should. Amy comforts him by saying he is doing his best. At this moment, the serum reaches the ideal temperature, and while Amy goes to find something to keep it cold for the trip, Wesley hears a noise beside him and he goes to investigate. He comes across a young woman with her back to him as if she is eating something. Wesley tells her to turn around and asks how she got in there. However, when the young woman turns around, he sees that she is semi-transformed and eating a cat. Wesley, not wanting to shoot, tells her not to come closer, but it's no use, and she advances. However, Amy arrives at that moment and electrocutes her with a taser, rendering her unconscious outside Lucy's house. Werewolves, now following Cody's orders, launch themselves against the electric fence in a fierce attempt to knock it down. The creatures throw themselves against the fence, and the lights in the house begin to flicker. Lucy then arms herself with her shotgun and prepares for the worst. She observes through what remains of the cameras and sees one of the monsters pushing a post to fall on the fence, thereby causing a complete blackout in the house. Now, with free entry to Lucy's property, only the doors with barricades remain to prevent the monsters invade all at once. The traps catch some, but others are already banging on the doors and windows to get in. Lucy and Emma spread emergency lights throughout the house and prepare for the attack in the living room. Lucy notices one of the monsters is on the ceiling, but hears that it has been caught in one of the traps that Wesley set, giving them more time after taking another dose of the serum. Wesley and Amy continue through the streets to reach Lucy's house. Along the way, they come across a group of heavily armed people, well dressed against the light of the supermoon, who are fighting against a pack of werewolves. Wesley sees this as an opportunity to reach his sister-in-law's house faster. The armed group manages to drive off the pack of monsters for now. When Wesley and Amy reveal themselves and ask not to shoot, even with the strong pleas and affirmations that they are protected against the light of the supermoon due to the serum, the men do not listen. When suddenly a werewolf attacks one of the armed men and another shootout against the creatures begin. This forces Wesley and Amy to protect themselves as best as they can from the crossfire and the creatures. More and more werewolves are attracted to the location, and the armed men are defeated, realizing that the creatures are surrounding them more and more. Amy has the idea of using herself as bait, asserting that she has a theory that needs testing. She manages to convince Wesley by saying he needs to get to Lucy, and he asks her not to die. Amy attracts the creature's attention, and one of them approaches with heavy steps. The creature sniffs her without attacking immediately, giving her a slight nibble. Amy then stands against the creature, letting out a scream of dominance, which causes the monster to respond with an infernal roar right in her face at that moment. Wesley shouts from the top of one of the cars, and with an anti-aircraft machine gun, he targets the creatures, who soon scatter trying to take refuge once the monsters have run. Wesley shouts for Amy to run and get in, the car with him to escape. But before she can get in, a monstrous hand grabs her and drags her up. Wesley tries to see her, but it's too late, and both the monster and Amy are already out of his sight, with no options left in needing to reach Lucy. Wesley quickly drives away. Lucy has already wasted several bullets shooting at the ceiling, killing some monsters that managed to enter. However, the monsters continue to come, and already running low on ammunition, Lucy finds herself in a worrying situation with her daughter. Beyond the ceiling, some others are about to break down one of the doors. Once the bullets run out, Lucy now only has knives and a can of pepper spray to defend herself with her daughter. The barricades and even the ceiling can no longer withstand. So one by one, the monsters begin entering the house as Lucy and her daughter look for a place to hide. Just as they are about to find the mother and daughter, the sound of a horn outside resonates loudly. It's Wesley who has arrived and is trying to draw the creature's attention. The monsters then gather in the middle of the street, and Wesley advances to run them over. However, the last one, which is Cody, leaps onto the hood of the vehicle, causing Wesley to crash into a house. After believing they are free from the threat, Lucy and her daughter are surprised by one of the creatures that advances, breaking through the wall of the house to attack them. They run to another room, and Lucy hides Emma in the wardrobe. Lucy waits behind the door for the monster to enter, and when it enters, it goes straight for Emma. The girl sprays the creature, and Lucy tries to attack it from behind but is thrown away, seeing her mother in danger. Emma strikes the beast with a knife but without success, and just as she is about to be attacked, Lucy grabs an axe and strikes the monster with it. Wesley approaches the house calling for Lucy and Emma, and to his relief sees that they are both alive. Wesley checks if the two are injured, and seeing they are not, they prepare for the next attack since the werewolf Cody is still alive and is about to free himself from the car. Crushing him against the wall, out of bullets, and with no way to fight against the beast outside, Wesley has one last desperate idea. He bids farewell to the two, encouraging Emma to always be strong and brave as she grows up, then gives Lucy a watch set for 15 minutes, which is the time left until dawn. He then goes outside, and having already lost the serum's effect, he also transforms into a werewolf to fight Cody on equal terms. The two beasts then begin the brutal combat, but soon Wesley gains the upper hand and defeats his opponent, knowing that Wesley is now also one of the monsters. Lucy hurriedly hides Emma in a safer place. She then hears the heavy steps of werewolf Wesley approaching. When she finds one last shotgun shell lying on the floor, Lucy loads her weapon, and before the beast can enter, she pleads for Wesley within the monster to hear her and not harm them. However, he enters and approaches, but Lucy grabs a family photo, trying to bring back Wesley's reason. The creature does not attack, but soon rises and lets out a loud roar causes Lucy to fall. She prepares to shoot when her watch beeps, signaling that the sun is already rising. Then, as a last desperate measure, she shoots at the window to let sunlight in. The sun shines brightly outside, and Wesley manages to return to normal before causing any tragedy to his family.